Close your eyes now and take a deep, slow breath in and out. Let your body sink a little deeper into whatever is supporting you, feeling the gentle weight of relaxation spreading through your muscles. Tonight, we're going on a peaceful journey back through time to a land of golden deserts and flowing waters, to ancient Egypt, a civilization that thrived for over 3,000 years along the banks of the mighty Nile River. Pause. Imagine yourself floating, gently floating, as if you're drifting on calm, warm water. The evening sun is setting over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose gold. You feel perfectly safe, perfectly calm, as we begin our journey together through this ancient, tranquil world. Pause. You find yourself standing on the soft, sandy bank of the Nile River. The water moves slowly beside you, its surface catching the last golden rays of daylight. You can hear the gentle lapping of tiny waves against the shore, a rhythm as old as time itself. The air is warm and carries the faint, earthy scent of river water and sun-baked soil. The ancient Egyptians called their land Kemet, which means the Black Land, named after the rich, dark soil that the Nile River brought to their fields each year. This fertile earth was the foundation of everything, of life itself, and they cherished it as a gift from the gods. Pause. As you stand here, you notice papyrus reeds growing along the riverbank, their tall, green stalks swaying gently in the evening breeze. These plants were so precious to the ancient people. They discovered how to press the inner pith of papyrus stems together in layers to create the world's first practical writing material, smooth sheets that could preserve their words, their stories, their wisdom for thousands of years. The invention of papyrus paper allowed the Egyptians to record everything, from sacred texts to daily accounting records, and this innovation would eventually spread throughout the ancient world, becoming one of Egypt's most valuable exports. Pause. You begin to walk slowly along the riverbank, your footsteps quiet in the sand. There's no hurry, nowhere you need to be, just this peaceful evening walk through time. The Nile stretches before you, calm and eternal. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus once wrote that Egypt was the gift of the Nile, and as you walk beside these gentle waters, you understand exactly what he meant. Pause. This river flows northward for over 4,000 miles, one of the longest rivers in the entire world, beginning deep in the heart of Africa and journeying all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. For the ancient Egyptians, the Nile wasn't just water, it was life itself, predictable, generous, divine. Pause. Every year, between June and September, the Nile would rise in a phenomenon called the inundation. Rainfall far to the south, in the Ethiopian highlands, would cause the river to swell and overflow its banks. This wasn't a violent flood, but a gentle, gradual rising. The waters would spread across the floodplain, leaving behind layers of rich, mineral-filled silt when they receded. This annual flood was so reliable, so essential, that the Egyptians organized their entire calendar around it. They divided their year into 3 seasons: Ake, the inundation; Parate, the growing season; and Shimu, the harvest. Each season lasting 4 months, a rhythm as steady as a heartbeat. Pause. You notice the sky is deepened now into shades of purple and deep blue. The first stars are beginning to appear, tiny points of light that the ancient Egyptians watched with careful attention. They were skilled astronomers, these ancient people. They noticed that the star Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, which they called Sobded, would reappear on the eastern horizon just before dawn each year, right around the time the Nile began to flood. This observation helped them predict the inundation with remarkable accuracy, and they incorporated this stellar event into their religious calendar, celebrating the rebirth of Sopdet as a herald of renewal and abundance. Pause. As you continue your gentle walk, you see in the distance a small village. Mud brick houses with flat roofs, smoke rising from cooking fires, the warm glow of oil lamps beginning to flicker in windows. Life here moves at the pace of the river, slow, steady, peaceful. The ancient Egyptians built their homes from sun-dried mud bricks, made from the very same Nile mud that nourished their crops. These simple structures stayed cool in the intense desert heat. The thick walls absorbed the warmth during the day and released it slowly at night. Families would often sleep on their flat rooftops during hot summer nights, lying under the vast canopy of stars, cooled by gentle breezes from the river. Pause. You can almost hear the distant sound of children laughing, the low hum of conversation, a mother singing softly to her child. Life in ancient Egypt, for most people, was centered around family, community, and the endless cycles of planting and harvesting. The moon is rising now, a perfect silver crescent hanging in the darkening sky. The ancient Egyptians believed the moon was a manifestation of Khonsu, a gentle god of time and healing. They watched its phases carefully, using the lunar cycle alongside their solar calendar. Pause. You find yourself drawn to the village, walking slowly along a narrow path. In your mind's eye, you see the daily rhythms of ancient Egyptian life unfolding around you. Most ancient Egyptians were farmers, working the fertile land made possible by the Nile's embrace. During the inundation season, when the fields were underwater, many farmers would work on building projects, temples, tombs, monuments, earning grain as payment for their labor. This wasn't forced labor as was once believed, but a form of national service, a way for everyone to contribute to Egypt's grandeur. Pause. Imagine walking through a marketplace now. The air filled with the mingling scents of fresh bread, dried fish, onions, and beer. Yes, beer. The ancient Egyptians brewed beer as their most common daily beverage. They made it from barley bread, partially baked and then crumbled into water with dates for sweetness. The mixture would ferment into a thick, nourishing drink that even children consumed, as it was safer than water and provided essential nutrients. Workers building the pyramids were paid in beer, about 4 to 5 liters per day, along with bread, onions, and garlic. These staples kept them healthy and strong. Pause. You see women in your mind's eye, wearing simple linen dresses. Men in linen kilts or loincloths. Linen was the fabric of ancient Egypt, woven from the fibers of the flax plant that grew abundantly in the Delta region. The finest linen was so sheer and delicate it was called woven air, reserved for royalty and the wealthy. But everyone wore linen, because cotton wasn't yet known in Egypt, and wool was considered impure for religious purposes. In the hot climate, these loose, white linen garments reflected the sun's heat and allowed air to circulate, keeping people cool and comfortable. Pause. Children ran barefoot through the streets. Many adults went barefoot too, though some wore simple sandals made from woven papyrus reeds. The wealthy might have sandals made from leather, sometimes decorated with gold. But bare feet were common and practical in the soft sand and warm climate. Let yourself relax even more deeply now. Feel your breathing, slow and natural, like the gentle current of the Nile. We're going to drift now toward the pyramids, those eternal monuments rising from the desert sand. Pause. In the distance, you can see them, three great triangular silhouettes against the starlit sky. The pyramids of Giza, built over 4,500 years ago during what historians call the Old Kingdom, often referred to as the Age of the Pyramids. The largest is the Great Pyramid of Khufu. For over 3,800 years, it was the tallest human-made structure on Earth. Imagine that, for nearly 4 millennia, nothing built by human hands reached higher toward the sky. Pause. As you approach these monuments in your mind, you feel no fear, only peace. These were not dark places, but eternal homes, built with devotion and remarkable skill. The ancient Egyptians believed that their pharaoh was a living god, a divine intermediary between the mortal world and the realm of the gods. When a pharaoh died, his pyramids served as a resting place for his body and a launching point for his soul's journey to the afterlife. The pyramid shape itself held deep meaning. It represented the primordial mound that emerged from the waters of chaos at the creation of the world, and it also resembled the rays of the sun spreading down from heaven to earth. Pause. These pyramids weren't built by slaves, as popular myths suggest. Recent archaeological evidence has shown that the workers were paid laborers, skilled craftsmen, and seasonal agricultural workers. They lived in nearby workers' villages where they received medical care, good food, and beer. Graffiti found inside the pyramid shows work gangs gave themselves names like Friends of Khufu and Drunkards of Menkaure. There was pride in this work, community, purpose. Pause. The Great Pyramid was built with approximately 2.3 million limestone blocks, each weighing between 2 and 15 tons. Yet the blocks fit together so precisely, sometimes with gaps of only half a millimeter, that you couldn't slip a piece of paper between them. This precision was achieved without iron tools, without the wheel for transport, without pulleys as we know them. Just copper tools, wooden sledges, ramps, and human ingenuity. Pause. Imagine sitting now on the soft sand near these ancient monuments. The night is perfectly calm. The stars will slowly overhead in their eternal dance. The pyramids stand silent and peaceful, catching the silver moonlight on their ancient stones. Take another deep breath, feeling more relaxed with each moment. We're going to explore now the ancient Egyptians' beautiful beliefs about death and the afterlife, beliefs that brought them comfort and hope. Pause. The ancient Egyptians didn't fear death the way many cultures did. Instead, they saw it as a transition, a journey to another form of existence. They called the afterlife Aru, or the Field of Reeds, a place they imagined as an idealized version of Egypt itself, with abundant crops, calm waters, and eternal peace. Pause. To prepare for this journey, they developed the practice of mummification, a process that took 70 days and was performed with reverence and care. The body was carefully washed in the waters of the Nile. The brain was removed through the nose with special hooks. The internal organs, the liver, lungs, stomach, and intestines, were removed and placed in 4 special jars called canopic jars, each protected by a different deity. The heart, however, was left in place, for the Egyptians believed the heart was the seat of intelligence and emotion, and it would be needed in the afterlife. Pause. The body was then covered in natron, a natural salt found in dried lake beds, which drew out all moisture over 40 days. Afterward, the body was wrapped in hundreds of yards of linen strips, each layer anointed with perfumed oils and resins. Small amulets were tucked between the wrappings, protective charms to aid the deceased on their journey. The most important amulet was the scarab beetle placed over the heart, inscribed with spells to ensure the heart wouldn't testify against the deceased during judgment. Pause. This care extended to animals too. The ancient Egyptians mummified cats, dogs, birds, even crocodiles and bulls. Animals that were beloved pets or sacred to particular gods, showing the deep respect they held for all life. Pause. Imagine now standing in a quiet tomb. The walls around you are covered in beautiful paintings, rich ochres, deep blues, vibrant greens. Images of daily life, farming, fishing, feasting. These weren't just decorations. The Egyptians believed that images and words held power, that these painted scenes would become real in the afterlife. So tombs were filled with everything the deceased would need: food, furniture, games, tools, even servants in the form of small statues called shabdi, hundreds of these little figures, ready to work in the afterlife fields. Pause. Relax your jaw, let your shoulders drop, soften any tension you might be holding. We're going deeper now into the spiritual world of ancient Egypt, into their wisdom about the soul. Pause. The ancient Egyptians believed that each person had multiple spiritual components. The Ka was your life force, created at birth. The Ba was your personality, often depicted as a bird with a human head, able to travel between the worlds of the living and the dead. The Ak was the transformed spirit in the afterlife. And then there was your name, your shadow, your physical body, all parts of your complete self. Pause. To guide the deceased through the dangerous journey to the afterlife, families would commission copies of sacred texts we now call the Book of the Dead, though the ancient Egyptians knew it as the Book of Coming Forth by Day. These weren't really books in our sense, but collections of spells, prayers, and instructions, written on papyrus scrolls and placed in the tomb. One of the most important chapters described the weighing of the heart ceremony. Pause. Picture this scene, peaceful and solemn. The deceased stands in the hall of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice. Their heart is placed on one side of a great scale. On the other side sits a feather, the feather of Ma'at, representing truth and righteousness. 42 divine judges watch. The god Anubis, with his black jackal head, operates the scales. Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, stands ready with his scribe's palette to record the result. If the heart was lighter than or equal to the feather, meaning the person had lived a good, honest, truthful life, they could proceed to paradise. If not, the heart would be devoured by Ammit, a creature part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus, and the soul would cease to exist. Pause. But the Egyptians were practical. They created a spell to help ensure a positive outcome, inscribed on scarabs and placed over the heart. It was essentially a request: "O my heart, do not stand up as a witness against me." Even in matters of eternal judgment, they sought to prepare and protect. Pause. The god Osiris presided over this judgment. Once a living king, according to myth, Osiris was murdered by his jealous brother Set, who cut his body into pieces and scattered them across Egypt. But Osiris's devoted wife, Isis, searched tirelessly and found all the pieces. With her magic and the help of Anubis, She reassembled Osiris, creating the first mummy. Osiris was resurrected, but not as a living king. Instead, he became the lord of the underworld, a compassionate judge who had himself experienced death and rebirth. This myth gave every Egyptian hope that they too could be reborn into eternal life. Pause. An hour has passed now. You're drifting deeper into relaxation, deeper into this ancient world. Let's meet some of the gods who populated the Egyptian cosmos, protective, powerful presences watching over the land and its people. Pause. Ra was the sun god, perhaps the most important deity of all. Each day, the Egyptians believed, Ra sailed across the sky in his solar boat, bringing light and warmth to the world. Each night, he journeyed through the underworld, battling the serpent of chaos, Apophis, before emerging victorious at dawn. This daily cycle of death and rebirth reflected the Egyptian view of existence, eternal, cyclical, ultimately triumphant. Pause. Sometimes Ra merged with other gods, becoming Ra-Horikti, combining with Horus, the falcon-headed sky god, or Ammonius Ra, joining with Ammonius, the hidden one, the king of gods. The Egyptians didn't see contradictions in these combinations. Their theology was fluid, layered, complex. Different regions had different primary deities, and they all coexisted peacefully in the vast pantheon. Pause. Hathor was the goddess of love, beauty, music, and motherhood. Often depicted as a cow or a woman with cow's ears, she was a gentle, nurturing presence. The ancient Egyptians would celebrate her with festivals full of music, dancing, and wine. Imagine a feast day dedicated to Hathor, the sound of sistrum rattles filling the air, women dancing with their hair adorned with flowers, everyone celebrating life, love, and joy. Pause. Batet was the cat goddess, protector of the home, women, and children. Cats were sacred in ancient Egypt, beloved as pets and revered as divine creatures. To kill a cat, even accidentally, was a serious crime. When a family cat died, the household would go into mourning, shaving their eyebrows as a sign of grief. Cats were often mummified and buried with honor. In the city of Bubastis, Bastet's cult center, hundreds of thousands of mummified cats have been discovered. Pause. Thoth, with his ibis head or sometimes appearing as a baboon, was the god of wisdom, writing, and magic. The ancient Egyptians credited him with inventing writing itself, hieroglyphs, those beautiful pictorial symbols that adorn temple walls and papyrus scrolls. Thoth was the patron of scribes, and students learning to write would pour out a few drops of water as an offering to him before beginning their studies. Pause. There was Anubis, the jackal god, protector of tombs and guide of souls. He was the one who invented mummification, according to myth, when he preserved Osiris's body. His black color represented both the color of death and the fertile black soil of Egypt, death and rebirth intertwined. Pause. You're so relaxed now. Your breath is slow and easy. Let's walk together through a great temple, a place of peace and devotion. Pause. Egyptian temples weren't gathering places for congregations like churches or mosques. Instead, they were considered the actual houses of the gods. Only priests and priestesses could enter the inner sanctums where the god's statue resided. Imagine approaching a temple dedicated to Ammonius Ra at Karnak. This temple complex was added to and expanded by pharaohs over 2,000 years, eventually becoming the largest religious structure in the ancient world. Its great hypostyle hall contains 134 massive columns, each one carved from stone and rising 70 feet high. Walking between them, you would feel like you were in a forest of stone, shafts of sunlight streaming down from clear-story windows high above, dust motes floating in the golden beams. Pause. The walls are covered in hieroglyphs and reliefs, every surface telling stories of gods and kings. The ancient Egyptians believed that carving these images and words into stone made them eternal and real. Writing itself was considered magical, sacred. The very word hieroglyph means sacred carving. Pause. Priests served the gods through daily rituals. Each morning, the high priest would enter the dark inner sanctuary, carrying a lamp. He would break the clay seal in the shrine, open its doors, and greet the god statue. Then he would wash the statue, dress it in fresh linen, anoint it with perfumed oil, and offer it food and drink. 3 times a day, the god was served meals, and the priests would recite prayers and burn incense. Afterward, the food offerings would be redistributed to the temple staff and workers. Nothing was wasted, and everyone shared in the god's abundance. Pause. Becoming a priest was a prestigious career. Priests were educated, literate, and respected. Both men and women could serve as priests, though some deities were served primarily by one gender. Priests of most deities could marry and have families, living part-time in the temple and part-time in their own homes. They had to maintain ritual purity, shaving all body hair, bathing multiple times daily in the temple's sacred lake, wearing only white linen, and abstaining from certain foods during their service period. Pause. The sacred lake at a temple was more than a bath. It represented the primordial waters of creation. Some temples had artificial lakes shaped like the hieroglyph for water. Priests would perform their ablutions there at dawn, as Ra's sun rose over the eastern horizon, beginning another day of devotion. Pause. You're drifting now, peaceful and calm. Let's think about the pharaohs, those god-kings who ruled ancient Egypt for over 3 millennia. Pause. The word pharaoh actually comes from the Egyptian phrase Pere, meaning great house, originally referring to the royal palace itself, but eventually becoming the title for the king. The pharaoh was considered a living god, the son of Ra, the embodiment of Horus on earth. When a pharaoh died, he became Osiris, joining the gods in the afterlife. Pause. But pharaohs were also very human. They had families, loved ones, challenges. Tutankhamun, the famous boy king, came to the throne at only 9 years old and died at 19. His tomb, discovered nearly intact in 1922, gave the world an unprecedented glimpse into royal burial practices. The treasures found within, golden masks, chariots, furniture, jewelry, showed the incredible craftsmanship of ancient Egyptian artisans. But more touching were the personal items, 2 small coffins containing the mummified remains of his stillborn daughters, placed beside him so he wouldn't be alone in eternity. Pause. Hatshepsut was one of ancient Egypt's most successful pharaohs, and she was a woman. When her husband died and her stepson was too young to rule, she became regent. But she went further, declaring herself pharaoh and ruling Egypt for over 20 years. In a male-dominated role, she sometimes had herself depicted wearing the traditional false beard and male regalia of a pharaoh, but other times appeared clearly as a woman. Under her reign, Egypt was peaceful and prosperous. She launched trading expeditions, built magnificent temples, and commissioned countless statues and monuments. She was a powerful, capable ruler who brought stability and wealth to her people. Pause. Ramesses II, known as Ramesses the Great, ruled for 66 years, one of the longest reigns in Egyptian history. He lived into his 90s, which was extraordinary for the ancient world, and fathered over 90 children. He was a prolific builder, constructing temples and monuments throughout Egypt, including the famous temples at Abu Simbel, carved into solid rock, with 4 colossal seated statues of himself guarding the entrance, each one 67 feet tall. Twice a year, on dates aligned with Ramesses' birthday and coronation, the rising sun's rays penetrate deep into the temple, illuminating statues of Ra, Ammonius, and Ramesses himself in the inner sanctuary, an architectural feat that still amazes visitors today. Pause. So peaceful now, so calm. Let's explore the art and beauty of ancient Egypt, the creativity that has captivated the world for centuries. Pause. Egyptian art followed specific conventions for thousands of years. Figures were depicted in a distinctive style, heads in profile, shoulders facing forward, legs in profile again. This wasn't because they couldn't draw realistically. It was a choice, a way of showing each body part from its most characteristic angle, creating images that were clear and eternal rather than trying to capture a single fleeting moment. Pause. The ancient Egyptians were masters of color. They created pigments from natural minerals, red and yellow ochres from iron oxides, blue from copper and calcium compounds, green from malachite, white from limestone or gypsum, black from carbon. These colors were ground into powder, mixed with water and a binding agent, and applied to prepared surfaces. Amazingly, these paints have lasted for thousands of years, still vibrant in tombs sealed from light and air. Pause. Think of the famous bust of Nefertiti, her serene face, elegant neck, and tall blue crown. This limestone sculpture, over 3,300 years old, still captures the ideals of beauty from ancient Egypt. Symmetry, grace, a sense of calm dignity. Nefertiti's name means the beautiful one has come, and her portrait shows why. Her husband was the Pharaoh Akhenaten, who temporarily revolutionized Egyptian religion by promoting the worship of just one god, the Aten, the sun disk. Though this monotheistic experiment didn't survive his death, it showed the dynamic, evolving nature of Egyptian culture. Pause. Jewelry was highly prized in ancient Egypt. Both men and women wore elaborate ornaments, broad collars of beads, bracelets, anklets, rings, earrings. Gold was abundant in the deserts east of the Nile, and the Egyptians became master goldsmiths. They could hammer gold into sheets so thin they were nearly transparent, and they created intricate designs using techniques like granulation and cloisonne. Jewelry wasn't just decorative, it carried protective power. Amulets in the shapes of sacred symbols like the ankh, representing life, the jed, stability, and the wad jedi, protection, were worn by living and dead alike. Pause. The ankh symbol is perhaps the most recognizable. It looks like a cross with a loop at the top, and it represented eternal life. Gods are often shown carrying an ankh or holding it to the pharaoh's nose, giving the breath of life. Pause. Let yourself sink even deeper now, so heavy and relaxed. We're going to explore the knowledge and wisdom of ancient Egypt. Pause. The ancient Egyptians were highly advanced in many fields. In mathematics, they used a decimal system and understood fractions. They could calculate the area of circles, the volume of cylinders, and the slopes of pyramids. The Moscow mathematical papyrus and the Rhind mathematical papyrus preserve problems and solutions showing their sophisticated understanding. They didn't have algebra as we know it, but they could solve complex practical problems. How much stone was needed for a building project, how to divide rations among workers, how to calculate compound interest on loans. Pause. In medicine, Egyptian physicians were renowned throughout the ancient world. They specialized. There were doctors for the eyes, for the teeth, for the stomach. They understood that the heart was central to the circulatory system, pumping blood through vessels throughout the body. They could set broken bones, stitch wounds, and perform surgeries. Medical papyri record treatments for various conditions, mixing empirical observation with magical incantations. They saw no contradiction between practical medicine and spiritual healing. Pause. They made medicines from honey, which has natural antibacterial properties, from willow bark, which contains the same active ingredient as aspirin, from moldy bread, which they applied to wounds, perhaps an early form of antibiotic treatment. They used garlic, onions, and other plants both as food and medicine. Pause. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, one of the oldest surgical documents in existence, describes 48 cases of injuries and their treatments. It's remarkable for its rational, scientific approach, examining each case, describing symptoms, providing diagnosis and prognosis, and suggesting treatment. It distinguishes between injuries that can be treated, those requiring long-term care, and those beyond help. This text shows that ancient Egyptian physicians were careful observers, practical diagnosticians, and honest about the limits of their art. Pause. Education was highly valued, though not universal. Most children learned their parents' trades through apprenticeship. But talented children, especially boys from any class, could attend scribal schools attached to temples or government offices. There they learned to read and write hieroglyphs in hieratic script, a cursive form used for everyday documents, mathematics, literature, and proper behavior. Becoming a scribe was a path to advancement. Scribes were literate in a largely illiterate society, and they could rise to positions of great power and influence. Pause. So deeply relaxed now. Every breath taking you deeper into peace. Let's think about how the ancient Egyptians understood and measured time. Pause. The Egyptians developed one of the earliest calendar systems. They observed that the year had approximately 365 days, the time between one annual Nile flood and the next. They divided this into 12 months of 30 days each, then added 5 extra days at the end, which they considered birthdays of the gods Osiris, Horus, Set, Isis, and Nephthys. These 5 days were celebrated as holidays. This 365-day calendar was remarkably accurate and became the foundation for later calendar systems, including the Julian calendar used by the Romans and ultimately our modern Gregorian calendar. Pause. They also divided day and night each into 12 hours, though Egyptian hours weren't fixed in length like ours. Daytime hours were longer in summer and shorter in winter, always making 12 equal divisions between sunrise and sunset. Similarly, Nighttime hours adjusted seasonally. To tell time at night, they invented star clocks, observing which stars crossed the meridian at which hours. During the day, they used shadow clocks and later water clocks, devices where water dripped at a steady rate through a small hole, with marks inside showing the passage of hours. Pause. The concept of our 24-hour day comes from this Egyptian practice of dividing day and night into 12 hours each. Pause. Time was sacred. The gods moved through time in their eternal cycles. Ra's daily journey, the moon's monthly phases, the annual flood, the rising of Sirius. The Egyptians saw time as circular, repeating, eternal. Each ending was a new beginning. Each death, a rebirth. Pause. This understanding brought them comfort. Nothing was truly lost. The cosmos was orderly, reliable, maintained by Ma'at, the principle of truth, justice, and cosmic balance. As long as humans lived righteously and performed the proper rituals, the gods would maintain the universe, the sun would rise, the Nile would flood, life would continue. Pause. You're so relaxed now, so peaceful, drifting like a lotus flower on the gentle waters of the Nile. We're approaching the end of our journey together through ancient Egypt, but the peace you feel will remain with you as you drift into deep, restful sleep. Pause. Let's return once more to the riverbank where we began. The night is deep now. The moon has moved across the sky. The stars will overhead in their ancient patterns. The Nile flows on, eternal and calm, as it has for millions of years, as it flowed for the ancient Egyptians, as it flows still. Pause. This incredible civilization flourished for over 3,000 years. Imagine that, 3,000 years. From the first dynasty around 3100 BCE to Cleopatra's death in 30 BCE, marking the end of ancient Egypt's independence. For comparison, only 2,000 years separate us from the birth of Christ. Ancient Egypt's history is longer than all of recorded Western civilization since then. Pause. And throughout those millennia, people lived and loved. They planted crops and harvested them. They raised children who grew up to raise children of their own. They celebrated festivals and mourned losses. They created art, told stories, built monuments, wrote poetry, made music, prayed to their gods, and hoped for eternity. Pause. They left us so much. Not just pyramids and temples, though those are magnificent, but ideas, innovations. The 365-day calendar. Paper made from papyrus. The foundation of geometry and surveying. Medical knowledge. Advances in astronomy. Beautiful art. Profound spiritual beliefs about justice, truth, and eternal life. Pause. The ancient Egyptians believed that a person dies twice, once when their body ceases to live, and again when their name is spoken for the last time. By this measure, the pharaohs and common people whose names we still speak, whose monuments we still visit, whose art we still admire, they have achieved their dream of immortality. Pause. As you drift now towards sleep, imagine yourself once more on that peaceful riverbank. The sand is soft beneath you. The air is warm and gentle. The sound of the Nile lapping at the shore is like a lullaby. Pause. The ancient Egyptians had a beautiful evening prayer. May Ra grant that I wake in peace. Let that be your wish tonight too. Peace. peaceful sleep, peaceful rest, knowing that the sun will rise again, just as it has risen every day for billions of years, just as it rose over ancient Egypt. Pause. Your breathing is so slow and easy now. Your body is heavy and completely relaxed. You're safe, comfortable, drifting like a falaka boat on calm waters. The gods are watching over you. Ra in his solar boat. Nut, the sky goddess, arching protectively overhead. Osiris guiding souls gently to peace. Isis with her motherly care. All the gentle, protective powers of ancient Egypt surrounding you with peace. Pause. Let go now. There's nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to be. Just drift. Float downstream on these gentle waters, into sleep, into dreams, into rest. The Nile flows on, eternal, carrying you gently into sleep. The stars shine down. The moon bathes everything in silver light. And you are perfectly, completely, at peace. Long pause. Sleep now. Drift into deep, restful sleep. May you wake in peace. End soft fade with gentle night sounds, distant water, soft breeze.